single Saturday at 9:30 a.m. I hope you're all awake and ready. Let anyone else know that maybe or they could benefit from learning from a group of entrepreneurs and a group of business people that get together in what I consider to be a very fun, positive environment and an opportunity to expand and grow and maybe even do a little bit of networking. So on that note, my name is Eric Wilner. I am the reader for today. We do rotate the readers as you can hear the book from different voices. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the book that we are reading is Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant, A Guide to Financial Freedom. This is really the second in the series of books that Robert Kiyosaki wrote that are based on the Rich Dad story, the original book, where he talked about growing up and having a rich dad, entrepreneurial dad, and a poor dad. And it wasn't so much that he was poor during his career, but the net result at the end of the career was that he didn't have the same thing to show for it as his rich dad did, and the philosophies that got them to that point. So I just realized I didn't have my camera on. So good morning, everybody. I'm also sharing the screen, so hopefully you can see it. Right now, I'm showing the cover of the book. Is put a one in the chat just to make sure. Am I displaying the cover of the book right now? All right, let's see. Let me just open up my chat too. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you. Good morning. +2. There you go. Thank you, Jameson. Thank you, Ron, for your participation. By the way, participation is encouraged. We may stop at a couple of points of discussion, and all you have to do is raise your hand if you have a comment or a question, and that way we will go ahead and make this more interactive and more interesting, I think. So, are we not full screen? Because I'm showing full screen. Let me just go ahead here. Let's see inside of Zoom. See if I need to make any adjustments. I believe I am full screen.
We're still seeing the bar at the top, your working bar, whatever that's called. It's pretty much
Um,
green.
yeah, let's see. Ron, is there something else that I need to click on to go?
I think if you go to the bottom, the tools at the bottom, and you click on presenter, I think. Let me see what that says there. Present. Well, you're good enough. No problem with that, really, but one more click at the bottom, I think would do it. Bottom right-hand corner comes up.
Is that
There
it?
you go. There you go. You got it.
Okay. And in fact, I'm going to pop out of there. Thanks for showing me that. But because I'm going to switch between a couple of tabs, and when I go full screen, I lose the tab. So I will use that in just a second. I just wanted, first of all, to share with everyone the cover. Thank you, Ron. Number two, one of the important things about this book, The Cash Flow Quadrants, is this diagram. This it's a square, right? In a square divided by four quarters or quadrants. And on the left side, if you will, even though it's a little bit of an angle, on the left side, the E stands for employee, and this is for the benefit of anybody new, brand new. The S stands for self-employed. The B stands for business owner, and the I for investor. And so far, we've the first several chapters we talked about the definitions of each, sort of the philosophy or the characteristics, I should say, of each. On the left side, the important thing to note is the employee is the person who trades hours for dollars, right? Stop working, stop earning. There's no leverage on the left side quadrant because the employee, like I said, whether it's salary, whether it's dollars per hour, even commission, it's all their effort. There's no leverage. The self-employed is really an E on, on steroids, but it's the person who worked for a company and now goes out on their own, whether it be a lawyer, a dentist, or any of the entrepreneurial areas. But now you're going to get paid or maybe keep more of what you were already making because it's now your company. However, it's still your efforts. And even if you go from making $20 an hour to $200 an hour, there's still only 24 hours a day. So you're automatically limited by that. And that's where the saying by, and one of my favorite sayings by J. Paul Getty, where he talks about, I would rather, say this is his quote, I would rather have 1% of the efforts of 100 people than 100% of the efforts of just myself. And once you start to really think about business and all of the things that you do, that has a lot of meaning. I know I started looking at it and I started looking at like how do I get 100 people's efforts? But when you have rental property, you have someone that's spending about 1/3 of their income, or let's say 33% of their efforts, is going to the housing payment. So how many 33s do you need in order to get more than your 100? And of course, the ceiling is unlimited. So uh, I wanted to make sure that everyone had the foundation, and it's kind of good always to remember and go back to this. On the right side of the quadrant is the business owner. And a business, by definition, is a system, right, for delivering goods or services on a consistent and scalable basis. In other words, it's not you, it's the system that works. And that's why places like McDonald's can put teenagers, that are still in high school to do everything to make the system work. All you need to do is supervise it. And you could even have hire a supervisor as well. So that's the business owner. And the business owner, again, has leverage because you're using the efforts of others. You can increase it and scale it. And that's a great place to be. We want to go from the left side to the right side. And most people go from employee to maybe starting their own business, but it's a business, not just being self-employed, or self-employed who want to expand and grow and create a system, a formula, a business. And then finally, the best place, the ultimate place where you want to be is as an investor. And an investor has assets, assets that generate income, right? So it's no longer tied to his time or his efforts. And now he can develop the income through his investments that support his lifestyle. And one of my favorite saying is that everyone should have a B to create, to fund their I. And the neat thing about this is that you'll see that it doesn't take 40 years to create an I that can support you. It can take as little as 5 years. And if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and then understand the concepts that we're talking about, then the whole entrepreneurial journey becomes a lot easier to understand, easier to execute, and quite frankly, a lot more fun. So just keep this diagram in mind. Post it somewhere as a constant reminder. The other thing I just wanted to cover, not all the books that Rich Dad wrote, but just a real quick review of our table of contents, and that was on page 14. And so we've covered so far, the introduction, which quadrant are you in? And in the chat, type in which quadrant or quadrants are you in today? Today, okay? And you might be in several quadrants, not just two. And then the question I would have, and go ahead and drop it in the chat. I'm watching the chat. What quadrant or quadrants are you in? Because I think the first fundamental thing is I always identify your point A. You can't get to point B if you don't know where you are. Where is your point A? So thank you, Fernando. Fernando he's already 60% in the B quadrant. And I know that he has a percent in the I quadrant. There you go. And sometimes we could also be an employee of our own business. which is kind of interesting. So it's no quadrant is a bad quadrant. There's just more advantages on the right side. And ultimately the goal, right, when we retire, to have what most people call their golden years, not so late in life that you can't enjoy it. So thank you, Lovey. So she's self-employed and an investor. And that's also very good. So then in part one, we talked about the definitions and so forth. Jameson, E&S, moving to BNI. See, knowing your point A and having the clarity is what allows you to advance. Now, chapter one, why don't you get a job? That's the question that most people ask. In fact, we've been programmed from a young age, right? Go to school, get good grades, get a good, safe, and secure job. So we talked about all of that in chapters 1 through 6. That was talking about where you are and the movements, the definitions of the cash flow quadrant. It wouldn't hurt to go back and review some of those things, particularly chapter 5, where it had the 5 levels of investors. Chapter 4, also the 3 kinds of business systems. And then finally, it's eye-opening. You cannot see money with your eyes. And that talks all about understanding the fundamental numbers. So it's not what you physically see, it's the numbers will tell you the story. Now, the neat thing about part 2, which is where we're at right now, is bringing out the best in you, is now more about the mind or the psychological side of things. Mind really is over matter, and understanding the psychology and what prevents you, what mental roadblocks we tend to have, is real good. So we completed chapter 7, becoming who you are. We're in chapter 8 right now, and so I'm going to flip over to chapter 8 where we left off last time. In fact, I'm gonna roll back where we went up to 179, but only because I think the continuity is better. Starts on page 175. So if you have a book and you want to join along with us, 175. If you want to, if you have the digital PDF and you want to look at it, it's page 204. So that being said, let me go ahead and follow Ron's excellent suggestion to make it go full screen. Let's see if I can, before I do that, let me increase the letter size here, make it easier for everybody. Then let's go full screen. Oh, look at that. The full screen didn't let me do that.
It's perfect. It's full screen here.
Okay. It's the letters are a little bit smaller, it seems, this way. But so, and look at that. It took me back to 12. So let's go to,
The way you had it in the beginning will work for us. It was good. You just got all your open tabs visible.
and I'm not embarrassed. I am a multi-tabber, an excessive multi-tabber, and my IT guy hates me for it. And I'm sure it has its downfalls, but I use it a lot of times. It's sort of my checklist of the things that I still have to do. Anyway, 179 is where we left off. I wanted to go back to 175 here. I'm going to start right here where it says when you are an adult, question mark. And I think he was being very polite. I think what he meant, what he would have said if he wasn't trying to be as polite as possible, is when are you going to grow up? And so the reading goes, when going from the left side to the right side, we need to be adults. We all need to grow up financially. Instead of being parent or children, we need to look at money, work, and investing as adults. And what being an adult means is knowing what you have to do and doing it, even though you may not feel like doing it. And I'll tell you, that one is a stinger, because I can't tell you how many times I don't feel like doing something, And we have to overcome that little silent voice in our head when we don't feel it. My counter is that is if I don't feel like doing it, that means I must do it. So conversations within you. For people contemplating crossing from one quadrant to another, an important part of the process is to be aware and vigilant of your internal dialogue. Always remember that what sounds logical in one quadrant doesn't necessarily make sense in another. Going from financial security to financial freedom is primarily a process of changing your thinking. It's a process of doing your best to know which thoughts are emotion based and which are logic based. If you can keep your emotions in check and go for what you know to be logical, you have a good chance of making the journey. Ignore outside influences. The most important conversation is the one you are having with yourself. When Kim and I were temporarily homeless and financially unstable, our emotions were out of control. Many times, what sounded logical was pure emotions talking. Our emotions were saying the same thing our friends were saying: play it safe, get a secure job, and enjoy life. But logically, we both agreed that freedom made more sense to us than security. In going for financial freedom, we knew we could find a sense of security that a job could never give us. The only thing standing in our way were our emotionally driven thoughts. They sounded logical, but in the long term made no sense. The good news is that once we made it across to the other side of the cash flow quadrant, the old thoughts stopped screaming and the new thoughts became our reality. Today, I understand the emotions when a person says, I can't take risks. I have a family to think about. I must have a secure job, or it takes money to make money. That's why I can't invest, or I'll do it on my own. I feel their thoughts, for I've had those thoughts myself. But looking across the cash flow quadrant, having achieved financial freedom in the B and I quadrants, I can truly say that having financial freedom is a much more peaceful and secure way of thinking. Differences between E and B.
Hey,
Core
Eric,
emo- yes,
I think the other view is actually easier for us to read. You might ask the other people, but I think it's easier for us.
thank you for saying that because I know it's a lot easier for me
Good,
when
go for it.
because I can see the, the letters bigger. So just ignore the distractions of the tabs above. That's a full Saturday ahead of me. But let's talk about the letters being bigger like this. I like it as well. Let's see. I feel for the thoughts. Let's go. Differences between E and B. Core emotional values cause different points of view. The struggle in communication between business owners and employees is often caused by differences in emotional values. There has always been a struggle between E and B because one wants more pay and the other wants more work. That is why we often hear, I'm overworked and underpaid. And from the other side, we often hear, what can we do to motivate them to work harder and be more loyal without paying them more? Differences between the B and I. There is also constant tension between business owners and the investors in that business, often called shareholders. One wants more capital and the other wants greater dividends. A conversation at a shareholders meeting may sound like this: company managers, we need a private jet so our executives can get to their meetings faster. Investors, we need fewer executives, then we won't need a private jet. Differences between S and B, the self-employed and the business owner. In business transactions, I often see a bright S, such as an attorney, put a multi-million-dollar deal together for a B, a business owner. When the transaction is completed, the attorney becomes silently angry because the B makes millions and the S earns an hourly wage. Their words might sound like this. The attorney might say, well, we did all the work and he made all the money. Business owner B might say, How many hours did those guys bill us for? We could have bought the whole law firm for what they charged. So that's true. Differences between E&I, employees and investors. Another example is a bank manager who gives an investor a loan to buy some real estate. The investor makes hundreds of thousands of tax-free dollars, and the banker gets paid a paycheck that is taxed heavily. The bank manager, the E, might say, I give that guy a loan, and he doesn't even say thank you. I don't think he knows how hard we worked for him. The investor, the I, might say, boy, those guys are picky. Look at all this useless paperwork they have to do just to get a lousy loan. Emotionally volatile marriage. The most emotionally volatile marriage I have ever witnessed was a couple where the wife was a hardcore E who believed in a job for financial security, while the husband fancied himself a high-flying I. He thought he was a future Warren Buffett, but in reality, he was an S, a commission-only salesman by profession, and a chronic gambler at heart. He was always looking for the investment that would help him get rich quick. He was all ears for any new stock offering, offshore investment scheme that promised ultra high returns, or a real estate deal that he could take an option on. This couple is still together, but I really don't know why. Each drives the other nuts. One person thrives on risk, the other hates risk. Different quadrants, different core values. If you are married or in a primary relationship, circle the quadrant you generate the majority of your income from. Then circle the quadrant your spouse or partner generates income from. The reason I ask you to do this is that the discussion between partners is often difficult if one partner doesn't understand where the other is coming from. The battle between the rich and the educated. There's another unspoken battlefield, and that is the difference on points of view between the educated and the rich. See this throwback to Rich Dad, Poor Dad? In my years of researching the differences between the different quadrants, I often heard bankers, attorneys, accountants, and others like them grumble that they are the educated ones, and it is often the so-called less educated person who makes the big bucks. This is the root of the battle between the educated and the rich. It's not that people in the B and I quadrants are uneducated, because many are highly educated. It's just that many B's and I's were not academic whiz kids in school. For those of you who read my book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you might know it's about the struggle between the educated and the rich. My highly educated but poor dad took great pride in the fact that he had years of advanced studies at prestigious schools like Stanford and the University of Chicago. My rich dad was a man who dropped out of school to run his family's business when his father died. So he never finished high school, yet he acquired tremendous wealth. As I grew older and seemed to be more influenced by my rich but uneducated dad, my educated dad was occasionally defensive of his station in life. One day, when I was about 16, my educated dad blurted out, I have advanced degrees from prestigious schools. What does Mike's dad have? I paused and replied quietly, money and free time. So, more than a mental change. As stated earlier, success in the B or I quadrant requires more than academic or technical knowledge. It often requires a change in core emotional thinking, feelings, beliefs, and attitude. Remember, be, do, have. Be, do, have. What the rich do is relatively simple. It's the be that is different. The difference is found in their thoughts and more specifically, their internal dialogue. That's why my rich dad forbade me from saying, I can't afford it. I can't do that. Play it safe. Don't lose money. What if you fail and never recover? He banned those statements because he truly believed that words are powerful tools. What a person says and thinks becomes real. How many people really believe that, right? Um, okay, I'll try that a little bit later. But how many people believe that, right? What person says and thinks becomes real. It's kind of like the theory behind the book, The Secret. Rich Dad firmly believed that what we said to ourselves became our reality. That's why I suspect that for people who struggle financially, their emotions often do the talking and control their lives. Until a person learns to overcome those emotionally driven thoughts, their words do become reality. Words such as, I'll never be rich. That idea will never work. It's too expensive for me. If they are emotionally based thoughts, they are powerful. The good news is that they can be changed with the support of new friends, new ideas, and a little time. And this reminds me of the conversation we had a few weeks back about who are the 5 people that you surround yourself most of the time. Who are the 5 most influential people in your life? You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. People who are not able to control their fear of losing should never invest on their own. They really are best served by turning that job over to a professional and not interfering with them. I've met many professional people who are fearless when investing other people's money and able to make lots of money. But when it comes to investing or risking their own money, their fear of losing becomes too strong and they ultimately lose. Their emotions do the thinking rather than their logic. I've also met people who can invest their money and win constantly, but lose their calm when someone else asks them to invest money for them. The making and losing of money is an emotional subject. So my rich dad gave me the secret to handling these emotions. Rich Dad always said to be successful as an investor or a business owner, you have to be emotionally neutral to winning and losing. Winning and losing are just part of the game. That's a writer downer right there. To be successful, you need to be emotionally neutral to both winning and losing. So, quitting my secure job. My friend Mike had a system that belonged to him. His father built it. I did not have that good fortune. I knew that someday I was going to have to leave the comfort and security of the nest and begin to build my own system. In 1978, I resigned from my full-time job with Xerox and took the hard step forward with no safety net. The noise in my head from my fear and doubt was loud. I was nearly paralyzed with fear as I signed my letter of resignation, collected my last paycheck, and walked out the door. I had an orchestra of self-damaging thoughts and feelings playing inside me. I was bad-mouthing myself so loudly and with such conviction that I couldn't hear anything else. It's a good thing because so many of the people I work with were saying, he'll be back. We'll never make it. The problem was that I was saying the same thing to myself. Those emotional thoughts of self-doubt haunted me for years until Kim and I were successful in both the B and the I quadrants. Today, I still hear those words. They just have less authority. In the process of putting up my own self-doubt, I learned to create other thoughts and statements of personal encouragement. Statements such as keep calm, think clearly, keep an open mind, keep going. Ask someone who has gone before you for some guidance. Trust and keep the faith in a higher power wanting the best for you. That's a strong motivator. I learned to create these thoughts of encouragement internally, even though there was a part of me that was frightened and afraid. I mean, that's just human nature. I knew that I had little chance of success my first time out, but the positive emotions of trust, faith, and courage, along with good friends, moved me forward. I knew that I had to take risks. I knew that risk led to mistakes, and mistakes led to wisdom and knowledge, both of which I lacked. For me, failure would have been to let my fear win, so I was willing to move forward with few guarantees. My rich dad had instilled in me the idea that failure is part of the process of success. Failure is part of the process of success. Isn't it true that we're often afraid? We don't want to be embarrassed to fail in public. We don't want to fail even to ourselves. We don't want to fail to our families. The idea that failure is part of the process of success. In fact, I'll tell you that as a hiring thing, one of the things that I like most are people who list team sports as one of their hobbies, interests, and something that they participate in. Particularly, if they were at the high school varsity level or at the college level, even, let alone professionals. The reason that you see a lot of professional athletes that go into business succeed is exactly this, is that they're used to failing. In fact, let me tell you this, one of the best sports uh, mentality is a baseball player. Baseball players have to get up, spotlighted at bat, and then swing at somebody throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastball or curveball at them. In fact, think about the metaphor. You're constantly getting thrown curveballs, and you have three chances to hit that ball before you're out. But you see, you're not out permanently. You see, the average batter, I should say the all-star level baseball player strikes out 7 out of 10 times. But it's those 3 times that they hit a ball. Could be a home run, could be a double, a triple. But notice that they're not intimidated or put aside because they know that if they can bat 3 out of 10, they're going to the All-Stars. They're top players. A player that has a 500 means that they only succeed half the time, goes to the Hall of Fame, which is pretty interesting. And that's why my ears always perk up when someone comes from a baseball background. And I'll tell you my own funny baseball story, and maybe that's a little bit of the bias for it. I played varsity baseball in high school, and I was a pretty good player. Growing up, I was shortstop, pitcher. The positions that often get more attention, and I thought I was really rocking it. And then I went to college, and I went to a college which is a top tier baseball team, and I had no scholarship. I wasn't even there because of baseball, but I figured, hey, I'm a good player. Let me see if I can walk on. And this skinny kid who just arrived in Southern California walks onto this baseball field where there's 6'6", 200-pound, oat-fed Oklahoma boys, and I immediately saw that my odds there were absolutely zero. But just a little baseball story, and that's where my baseball career ended right there. Anyway, all of this that we're talking about is the internal journey. By the way, do I see any hands or anybody who wanted to add a comment at this point? Because this this right here, the failure is part of the process of success, and it's the people that fail the most. You know, Fernando saying failing hurts. The growing process from its heavenly from it is heavenly. The growing process from it is heavenly. And that is true. We grow far more from our failures or our challenges. And they don't even have to be necessarily failures. You know, you're only a failure when you stop trying, right? That's the only way. If you fail once, but you're going to try again, then you're far from a failure. You're really more of a champion. Abe Lincoln was famous for saying, I'm not concerned that you have fallen. I'm only concerned that you get back up again. Jameson, good morning.
Good
Good
morning, Eric.
evening.
Great read. I love you how you go over the book and share the kind of where we're at and what we're doing and the concepts and the philosophies first because it really makes it kind of ties you into where we're at. A couple of things that there's this book going back to education and stuff. It's called "You Can't Learn to Ride a Bicycle in a Seminar." It's like you can be taught all you want the engineerings, the facets, but until you get out there and do it, it's like it's not gonna happen. Um, when you mentioned a little bit about the secret and kind of like that philosophy where words become reality, I learned this one thing. Anything you say after I am is a command to your brain, and to be wrong is to be could potentially die. So our brain is tied to like if I can't see the salt when it's right in front of you, your brain kind of shuts it off in your mind and you can't see it. Like you can't be wrong. So that's this other thing. Back to Rich Dad and Poor Dad, one had IQ. He was high in IQ, very, very rich in depth and broad in his education. But what happened with Rich Dad, he was I think he was like 9 years old when his father died, and he had to take over, help his mom at the convenience store. And he became emotionally intelligent, trying to deal with all the situations. So he actually gained his intelligence as he was gaining his emotional intelligence to handle the pressures of being in a business. And I love your idea about the your experience and the idea of a baseball player because they do literally get paid to take risk and to fail, but when they do connect, they and to make the plays, but failure is not a loss, it's just an opportunity to get better. Thank
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that. And like I said, I always remind myself about the baseball player and the all-star player, strikes out 7 out of 10 times, but it's those three that count. The seven, you'll forget about it once you let the emotional thing go away. So the two biggest takeaways so far from today's reading is, number one, be emotionally neutral to both winning and losing. That's not easy, but it's when you know that failure is only when I stop trying. And when you really internalize, and I'm going to work on that, is internalizing that failure is just part of the process. And I don't care who you are, whether you're Elon Musk or Warren Buffett, they all have failures. They just don't dwell on them, number one, and their hits are much greater than their strikeouts. So, Fernando, I see your hand is up.
Eric, great read this morning. I'm excited to share that when you learn what I and B have in their mind is they have emotional intelligence, and we gotta educate our emotions, especially when we're going through a process of a difficult time to a solution. Most people go back to the safety net, right? And they decide that I'm gonna go back to the job that I had before. For instance, as Robert Kiyosaki was saying, letter of resignation, right? So when you decide to let go of a job, which is what I did back in 1995, it was scary. The first week, Eric, I was froze in my car. I had my business cards in my hands. I just couldn't get out of my car because I don't know what to say to people. And I made the decision to go full time because when I was part time, I was still comfortable making my full time income, and I knew that my part time independency paid me more. But the minute that I decided to let go of my safety, job, I froze for a whole week. I didn't know what to do. It would take me like 2 hours to get out of my car to go try to hand out 20 business cards. Sometimes the minute that I did that for the first time and I took the courage to do it, I only handed out like 5 cards and so on and so forth. So emotional intelligence comes from failure. And that's when you're tested because you got two voices talking to you. One is go back to where you came from, and the other one is should I keep going? And that's the defining moment of emotional intelligence. Because if you start making the decisions to go where the risk is, eventually you're going to learn to control your emotions. It's painful. I mean, the pain never goes away, but you know that the rewards are unbelievable. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Fernando. And it's so true. And your emotions are like a muscle, right? If you don't use them, they become weak and don't serve you. When you are constantly doing things, you're also working your mental, emotional muscles. And that's where really what it takes. If you only try once, it's a win or lose immediately. But if you're going to try 100 times, if you miss 5 or 6 times, there's 95 more to go. So that's a very, very good point. Cassandra, good morning. How are you? Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good
Man, great
morning.
reading, Mr. Eric. I just want to piggyback off of that. Um, it's a pitch. It's always a picture that one time Fernando had posted it one time, and it was like this man climbing up these stairs, and he fell off, but he kept climbing. He kept climbing, and that's how we do. We have to keep climbing, and we're up and down, but as long as you stay the course and keep going and keep your faith, it will work out. And then the only thing is, um, yes, we get discouraged, with different things in life. Life be lifing, but if you never understood, like, what if I quit, what will happen, so we always got to keep going, and because our victory is around the corner, but we got to keep strong, and sometimes the more we fall, the stronger we get sometimes too. So I am like that. Right now it's like I got to keep going, because if I stop now, regardless of whoever signs up, whoever don't, it's like, you know, one day if I keep planting them seeds, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna blossom. So thank you for the reading this morning, Mr. Eric.
Well, thank you. Thanks for your input. And it is so true. It's the journey that makes us, right? It is the experiences, the risks that we take. We grow more. And that's why it sounds like a tired cliche, right? Get out of your comfort zone. But all the growth, and if you just thought about it this way, all the growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And so I have a little, in morning ritual that I do, and I have one of the mantras is, what am I going to do today to get out of my comfort zone? I got to do something, one thing every day. Because if you were to grow, just think about, if you were to grow 1% a day in some way, 1% a day, think about it in terms of temperature, right? Ice at 0 degrees is a solid block of ice, and you improve it, you increase the temperature 1 degree every single day. Well, at 1 degree, nothing changes. Second day, nothing changes, or nothing appears to be changing. And that's where a lot of us, tend to get frustrated and even give up. But it won't be until 33 days later that you're going to start to notice that the top of the ice is getting soft and wet. By the 40th day, right, that ice will be melting. By the 60th day, that ice will have melted. And now you went from a solid piece of ice that's good for cooling and chilling, but maybe not much else, to now you have water, and all the different powers and benefits of water. But 212 days later, at 1 degree per day, 212 days later, you get steam. steam that powers a locomotive. And it's just 1 degree change, it's all these little changes. And that's why I like to say, what am I going to do today to get out of my comfort zone? It might be making a phone call that you've been resisting, or, finishing a task that you've just been putting off because you don't feel like doing it. It's human nature, and it's in all of us. We all experience it. And that whole conversation about how the failures are taught us the most is why I worry so much in today's society, where the kids are so ultra protected. Everybody gets a trophy. It is, I believe, through the winning and losing in the games that I played growing up. Luckily I was a very independent kid, and my parents allowed me to be independent and to make mistakes, and I made my share of mistakes. But I think that's what formed today, the lower level of fear to make mistakes, and the excitement to get out of my comfort zone. So Ron.
Yes, I had a paradigm shift way back at the front of this chapter here, and it was based on which is more important, so to speak, security or freedom. And I've been pretty much taught you need to get the secure job or invest and get security, security, security. Well, freedom is what he chose. And that shifted my priority. I never thought about it that way. I didn't think I was being unintelligent by looking for security. That way I'll be okay. But freedom is expanding, where security in my mind now is pretty much staying the same. So that was a total shift when you read that part.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that is a shift. And, again, back to kids, as parents, we want our kids to be safe and secure. But if we don't allow them the freedom to make mistakes, have little failures along the way, that teaches them, right? If you never let them near a stove, they don't know that touching the stove when it's on will burn you. But if they get close and it's a little burn when they're smaller, now they know they're never going to go do that again. It's very, very, very good point, Ron. Thank you. All right. I'm gonna head forward now. All of this, as I mentioned before, as I was telling we're in part 2, and now we're working on the mental shifts, right? The aha moments, like what Ron was talking about, is all in the mind conversation that we have. So we'll pick up here where it says internal journey. The path from one quadrant to the next is an internal journey. It is a journey from one set of core beliefs and technical skills to a new set of core beliefs and skills. The process is much like learning to ride a bicycle. There's that subject again. At first, you fall down a lot. Oftentimes, it's frustrating and embarrassing, especially if your friends are watching. But after a while, the falling stops and the riding becomes automatic. If you fall down again, it's not that big of a deal, because you know that you can get up and ride again. The process is the same when going from an emotional mindset of job security to an emotional mindset of financial freedom. Once Kim and I made the crossing, we were less afraid of failing because we were confident in our ability to stand back up again. There are 2 statements that kept me going personally. One was my rich dad's words of advice when I was on the brink of quitting and turning back. You can always quit, so why quit now? I love that one. I'm going to drop that one on. You can always quit. Why quit now?
I agree with you. That one hit me pretty comfortably.
That statement kept my spirits higher and my emotions calm. It reminded me that I was halfway there. So why turn back now? I have this saying I say all the time. It says, I didn't come this far to only come this far. The distance going back was the same as going forward. It would be like Columbus quitting and turning back halfway across the Atlantic Ocean. Sometimes quitting is the best move, and having the intelligence to know when to walk away is important. Too often I meet people who are so stubborn that they keep going forward on a project that has no chance of success. The problem of knowing when to quit or when to keep going is a common problem with anyone who takes risks. One way to manage this problem is to find mentors who have already successfully made the crossing before. Key right there. A person who is already on the other side can best guide you. But be careful of advice from someone who has only read books about the crossing and gets paid to lecture on the subject. Key point there. The other statement that often kept me going was, giants often trip and fall, but worms don't, because all they do is dig and crawl. The main reason so many people struggle financially isn't because they lack a good education or are not hardworking. It is because they are afraid of losing. If the fear of losing stops them, they've already lost. By the way, I just insert one comment here. There's an excellent book. It's called The Dip. And I'm trying to remember the name of the author. It's called The Dip, and it's an easy read. And it's exactly about the concept of quitting, because we're often told that quitters are losers, right? But knowing when to quit is also an intelligence. And what the dip is all about, it says, we're always going to go through a phase of, we learn something that's exciting. We want to get involved. We're all excited. And I'll tell you a story about that with my coaching career. But when the dip comes, most people simply stop. And if they were only to continue, it's kind of like the ice melting. If you were to raise a degree and for 30 straight days, nothing happened and you stopped, well, then nothing happens. But as the dip comes, right, and the time that it takes for the ice to melt, and then when you turn after 32 degrees, it starts to change. And then the dip turns up. And then it's the sky is the limit. And what you want to know is, if something is never going to fail, if I just do one degree every so often, that's not going to work, right? There's no definite outcome. And someone will tell you that, hey, listen, you're doing something that's not going to work. Somebody who has done it. And that's the other big thing right there, is someone who has done it, not someone who read about it, who can talk about it, but you want to talk to somebody who has done it. And that's the words that you take. The rest is conversation. That's all it is conversation. So the main reason so many people struggle financially isn't because of the lack of good education or are not hardworking. It's because they are afraid of losing. The fear of losing stops them. They've already lost. Losers cut their winners and ride their losers. Fear of being a loser affects what people do in strange ways. I've seen people who bought a stock at 20 sell their shares when they reached 30 because they were afraid of losing what they had gained. And then they watch the stock go up to 100, split, and go up to 100 again. Ironically, that same person who bought a stock at 20 will watch it go down to 3 and still hang on, hoping the price will come back up. This is an example of a person being so afraid of losing or admitting they lost that they wind up losing. Winners cut their losers and ride their winners. Winners do things almost exactly the opposite. Often the moment they took a losing position, their stock price starts to go down instead of up. They will sell and take their losses, get out. Most are not ashamed to say they took a loss, because a winner knows that losing is part of the process of winning. When they find a winner, they will ride it up as far as it can go. The moment they know the free ride is over and the price has peaked, they cut and sell. The key to being a great investor is to be neutral to winning and losing. Here it is again. Then you don't have emotionally driven thoughts such as fear and greed doing your thinking for you. Losers do the same things in life. People who are afraid of losing do the same things in real life. We all know people who stay in marriages where there is no longer any love, people who stay at dead-end jobs, people who hang on to old clothes and things they never use, people stay in towns where they have no future, people who stay friends with people who hold them back. Emotional intelligence can be controlled. Financial intelligence is closely linked to emotional intelligence. In my opinion, most people suffer financially because their emotions are in control of their thoughts. We as human beings all have the same emotions. What determines the differences between what we do and what we have in life is primarily how we handle those emotions. For example, the emotion of fear can cause some of us to be cowards, but it can also spur others to become courageous. Unfortunately, when it comes to the subject of money, most people in our society are conditioned to be financial cowards. When the fear of losing money comes up, most people's minds automatically start chanting security rather than freedom, avoid risk rather than learn to manage risk, play it safe rather than play it smart. I can't afford it rather than how can I afford it? It's too expensive rather than what is it worth long term? Diversify rather than focus. What will my friends think rather than what do I think? The wisdom of risk. There is a science to taking risks, especially financial risks. One of the best books I've read on the subject of money and risk management is Trading for a Living by Dr. Alexander Elder. Although it was written for people who professionally trade stocks and options, the wisdom of risk and risk management applies to all areas of money, money management, personal psychology, and investing. One of the reasons many successful Bs are not always as successful as Is is because they do not fully understand the psychology behind purely risking money. While Bs understand risk when it involves business systems and people, that knowledge does not always translate into systems of money making money. It's emotional more than technical. In summary, moving from quadrants on the left to quadrants on the right is more emotional than technical. Boom. If people are not able to control their emotional thoughts, I don't recommend the journey. The reason things look so risky on the right side to people on the left side is because the emotion of fear is often affecting their thinking. People on the left side think play it safe is a logical thought. It isn't. It's an emotional thought. And it is emotional thoughts that keep people stuck in one quadrant or the other. What people do on the right side of the equation isn't that hard. I'm sincere when I say that it's as easy as buying 4 greenhouses for low prices, waiting until the market improves, selling them, and then buying a big red hotel. Amen. Life really is a game of Monopoly for people on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. Sure, there is winning and losing, but that's just part of the game. Winning and losing are part of life. To be successful on the right side is to be a person who loves the game. The star athletes often lose more than they win, yet they love the game. Donald Trump went broke and battled back. He didn't quit because he lost. Losing only made him smarter and more determined. Ironically, not only in business, but in politics. Many wealthy people went broke before they became rich. It's part of the game. If a person's emotions think for them, these emotional thoughts often blind them from seeing anything else. It's because of those knee-jerk emotional thoughts that people react rather than think. And it's emotional thinking that causes people from different quadrants to argue. The arguments are caused by people not having the same emotional points of view. It's that emotional reaction that blinds a person from seeing how easy and often risk-free things are on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. I encourage all of you who want to make the crossing to make sure that you have a long-term positive support group and a mentor guiding you. Two great nuggets, a positive support group, which, by the way, is part of the reasons why we get together every Saturday morning to read this stuff together. This is a positive support group. Who now is your mentor or mentors? The struggle Kim and I went through was worth it. For us, the most important thing about crossing from the left side to the right side was not what we had to do, but who we became in the process. To me, that is priceless. And that concludes chapter 8. Next week, we'll pick up on chapter 9, Be the Bank, Not the Banker. But I would love to wrap up with some comments on this last part of the reading. I think it was really, really a valuable reading these last 2 weeks as we really dissected the emotional side of the game. And notice how many times that he said it's part of the game, or it's the game, love the game. It's not so much, the winning versus losing. He said be emotionally neutral to that. It's interesting because I'm a big follower of martial arts and the UFC. And I know you're probably wondering, like, what's a logical guy like you enjoy, that fighting, cage fighting. And what I'm always amazed at is at the end, two guys beating the living daylights out of each other. Number one, think about the fear of losing there, right? You're going to get hit. That's part of the game. You're good. You risk getting knocked out. You're going to get cut and bruised and bumped. That's part of the game. And at the end, the winner feels an emotional high. I can tell you, not because I compete on a professional basis, but I have competed. And winning is an emotional. It's like pushing yourself to find out what you're really made of. But I'm also equally as impressed sometimes by the guys that are champion level. And when they get beat, they go, you know what? Today was his day. He fought a better fight than I did. I'm going to go back to the gym. I'm going to work on some of the holes in my game, because the love of the game keeps him in the fight. And the same thing goes for business. And so this whole emotional conversation, people who are have the EQ, right? Emotional quotient versus the intelligence quotient, have a much better leg up. And the other thing I thought was kind of cool, how he kept talking about like the crossing, right? The journey going from the left side to do the crossing. It's like, come over to the good side, come over to the, to the bright side from the dark side. So that was kind of fun. Any other comments before we wrap things up today?
You just
If not,
basically said what
Yeah.
I was thinking.
go ahead, Ron.
I just said you just basically said what I was thinking about the winning, the losing, and the emotion, and to be neutral. When I first heard the writing here of be neutral to either of winning or losing, I took a step back. It's like, okay, well, why would I be neutral? And then the more I thought about it, it's like, okay, because that does not involve my emotions, which can bring me down and make me not go forward again. Because I get emotionally upset because I lost or whatever. And that's just not the way to think about it. It's like, okay, this is the way it is. Now, what do I do now to make it different and on my side the way I want it?
Absolutely. Yep. And if it's, I mean, imagine how healthy it is. And in one of the books that we read previously in our reading club, was I now ask myself habitually, that those things that are challenges or setbacks happened for me, not to me, right? We got to get out of, the words that we say to each other. And whenever I say, okay, I lost that battle, Why did that happen for me? And then I can pick apart what I did wrong or what I could have done better. So true. Very, very true, Ron. And like I said, or like he said there before, you can always quit. So why quit now? And the corollary to that one is and if you've been around me any amount of time and some of the battles that I have gone through, both in the divorce and everything, and I go, listen, I didn't come this far to only come this far. There's so much more ahead. Next in line, thank you, Ron, is Dr. Parker. Dr. Parker, good morning, my good friend, my co-pilot on Wednesday nights.
Great
Author-
morning, Eric.
Author of a brand new book just released on Amazon, Get Excited or Stay Broke. Talk about the emotions. How are you doing, Dr. Parker?
I'm doing great, man. Great read this morning. This is such a powerful read with Robert Kiyosaki. He kind of lays it out. He talked about, basically in layman's term, you got to keep your feelings out of it. Take that away from it. That it's a it's a yes, or it's a no. It does not matter. And my philosophy, in my approach at even building my business, if you're going to say no, I want you to hurry up and do it so I can get on to the next person that might say yes. And it doesn't phase me one way or the other, because at the end of the day, it's their loss, considering what I'm bringing to the table: a better life for you, a better life for your children, an opportunity to get, beyond this paycheck to paycheck living and barely getting by. So we do have to take our emotions out. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle. They take it personally, and you can't afford to do that, because you'll be crippled. You'll never move forward. You'll never have any success if you, again, take those things personal. So check your emotions at the door, go and do what you have to do, and keep pushing.
Excellent advice. Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Parker. Thank you very much. Fernando, bring us home.
Now, how can I put it? It's, what you read today, and hearing Dr. G.W. Parker really puts things in a proper perspective. But what I think about the most is what you said earlier in the reading, which is look for a mentor who has done it. And then I added, and who is doing it. Because people can talk about past stories, but what is it that they're currently doing now? Because you're constantly, if you get a mentor, I don't think mentoring is an ending time. It's always progression. And how do I see that? Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, right? All the leaders that are no longer here, they died being mentors. And you hear their information now, and it makes so much sense, because mentoring has nothing to do with income. It could be a mentor in sports, a spiritual mentor. It has to do with your mission. So long story short, I appreciate you, Eric, because yesterday I had a conversation with a gentleman that listens to you. And I said, I'm gonna give him a call because of that little accident that happened the other day. So I did the call because the system yesterday allowed me to, dial back, because he looked it up again. So I called him, and he didn't pick up, but then he called me back. And he told me all the great things that he has learned from you. Okay. And he still hasn't done business with you, but he has a lot of admiration, because he says he watches your morning real estate experience and process and all the education that you provide. He goes, man, this guy's good. He goes, I listen to him, and every time I listen to him, I always learn something new, because whatever comes out of his mouth, it's wisdom and knowledge. And I would love to do business with him. So who do we have in our surroundings is important. So Eric, I do want to thank you for being one of our team partners, because definitely you provide so much to the table, and you give us great education. So surround yourself with good leaders and mentors, because if you surround yourself close to them, you'll eventually become like them. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Fernando. And yeah, you made my day. I'm done. I'm good for all day today now. Thank you very, very much. It was a fun reading. It was, like I said, I think it was a very meaningful reading. Hey, why not tell a friend about our reading club? We would love to see, instead of 17 people here listening to us, what if we had 37 people here? If each one of us just brought one, that would be 34. But tell a friend, tell lots of friends, share with them the opportunity to spend a very positive way to start your day and really launch the weekend. With that being said, Fernando, our fearless leader here, one of my mentors, Back to you.
Thank you, Eric. Wow, what a morning. I'm telling you, you can't be fearful when you're surrounded with leaders. And that's the thing that we need to learn to, to understand. Who am I surrounding myself with? Oops, I forgot my little light here. Who am I surrounding myself with, and what am I learning? Okay, because whatever you're learning, if the information resonates with your vision, stick to it. Don't let that negative voice be a voice that takes you away from the things that you want to accomplish, because we're constantly being attacked by those negative voices. And now that you mentioned, Eric, the MMA, I mean, I see the stories and I hear the stories of what people go through to become tough fighters. I mean, the kind of training, they train as hard as they would fight in the ring, or maybe even harder as they would fight on that octagon. And that's how we live our lives, right? We're constantly fighting with these little demons, right? We're either like, okay, am I really headed in the right direction? And if I'm not, what do I need to do different? But don't be attacked by fear. Confront it with courage, and that's what winners do. So thanks again, Eric. We're gonna play some music, and then I'll put my little light in front of me. Go ahead.
Yeah, two things I'll just say. And how many times, whether it be boxing, MMA, or anything, or even in football, that you've seen a team down? One of my favorite games and one of my favorite athletes of all time, Tom Brady. I remember the Super Bowl where they were getting their butts kicked in the first half. Everybody thought the game was over. And then he came back to win it. And here's a guy, by the way, talk about being emotionally neutral, winning and losing. He has the same tone of voice, very matter of fact, very professional, very on point, whether he was on the losing end of that game or whether he was a Super Bowl champion. So that's very cool. The other thing, I just wanted to give a high five to Jameson. Thank you. He looked up the book I mentioned, The Dip, the little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick, by Seth Godin, which is the great author. So thank you for that also, Jameson.
Wow. Eric, aren't we surrounded with amazing people? Thanks, Jameson. Yes, we are. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about 18 minutes away from our presenter to come on board. Let's double the numbers. I'm gonna start doing my contacts right now. I know we